zoom awagelతాను.
Check, 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 check.
Sound settings select wasn't it? Select.
Okay, hello. A very good afternoon to our online participants. I'd like to thank you so much for registering in, and I can see that you're already online. We have a good number of people already. There are about 43. Our sincere apologies that the main sessions took long. We are late by an hour, and the physical participants have just headed out for lunch. So we are hoping to start at about 3:15. So please bear with us. In the meantime, as we wait for the physical participants to come in, our sincere apologies for the lapse in time, but for sure the breakout session is still on, and just like the program says, it's going to be on the justiciability of the right to health, with the sub-theme, the role of courts in advancing maternal and reproductive health rights. Yes, it's a critical subject matter, and we'll be moving away from the straight smart practice, which is mainly commercial, which litigants are used to talking about in general the role of different stakeholders as the panels, the speakers projected look like. The multidiscipline of speakers will have Professor Ben Tunomgesha. Most of you know him as Choki, for those who went to law school. We'll have Her Worship, Roslyn Insenge, the Chief Magistrate. And then we shall have a private practitioner, Counsel Kenneth Sebabi, Dr. Migade Deogracious, or Dr. Mugahe, Richard from Ministry of Health. And I, Dorothy Amron speaking, will be your overall moderator for this session. We shall also have Miss Jessica Oga, the head of regionalism, Afia Nahaki. She'll be summarizing for us the key takeaways from this session. Please don't drop offline. Stick with us, and we'll be ready to alert you when the session starts. For now, please take your time in whatever you're doing. I'm certain that we'll start at about 3:15, 3:30 as a stretch. Our sincere apologies for the delay. It was out of our hand. Thank you. Apologies to our online participants once again. My name is Dorothy Amron, and I work with Center for Health, Human Rights and Development as the technical advisor on gender, sexual reproductive health rights, and related coalition building endeavors. So today in this session, we're going to be talking about the justiciability of the right to health, and specifically we shall be looking at the role of courts in advancing maternal and reproductive health rights. So dear online participants, as we wait for the different panelists, I will run us through our concept note for this particular breakaway session, and it goes as follows. The right to health is a cornerstone of human rights and social justice. Yet, its realization remains uneven across jurisdictions. At its core, the enforceability of health-related rights hinges on the identification of duty bearers, enabling accountability, and ratifications of violations through judicial mechanisms. However, the enforceability of health-related rights is often challenged by constitutional limitations. In many countries, the right to health is not explicitly recognized or is only partially addressed within the Constitution, leading to significant challenges in enforcement. Nevertheless, in countries where national constitutions are silent or restrictive on the right to health, related constitutional rights and international laws can still provide a basis for its enforcement, as can be the case for Uganda. In Uganda, the journey towards making the right to health justiciable cannot be discussed without highlighting the crucial role courts have played in recognizing certain health-related rights as justiciable, particularly maternal health. Women in the room, you can relate, and even men, because it takes two to tango when we're talking about maternal health rights. And it goes to say we cannot talk about maternal health rights without talking about sexual and reproductive health rights. And then beg your pardon. So notably, the judgment of the Constitutional Court of Uganda in Petition 16 underscored the government's obligation to provide emergency obstetric care in public health facilities. This landmark decision not only affirmed the justiciability of maternal health rights, but also led to the efforts to strengthen related interventions, such as maternal and perinatal death surveillance and response. Ministry of Health will attest to this, as this was a responsibility that was ordered by court to them to report to Parliament quarterly. Given the evolving societal norms in legal practice, the need for further efforts among the stakeholders to address additional emerging challenges and opportunities is essential to further strengthen the enforceability of health-related rights. Stakeholders across the legal, policy, and healthcare sectors must collaborate to strengthen the enforceability of the right to health. We all know that our Constitution does not expressly state the right to health. Yeah? We only, pick bits and pieces from our objectives, and related maternal health rights are guaranteed in certain articles of our Constitution. Stakeholders across legal, policy, and healthcare sectors must collaborate to strengthen the enforceability of the right to health. And dear participants, both online and offline, you'll see that our panel constitutes a multidiscipline of speakers who you will later witness while they share their side of the story about advancing the right to reproductive and maternal health rights. So it takes collective effort in summary. Okay? Integral to this process is the interpretation of the law and the development of a comprehensive legal framework which not only aligns with judicial decisions, but also advances reproductive justice in Africa. For litigants seeking to expand the justiciability of the right to health, strategic litigation, we'll hear more about strategic litigation, which is founded on the enforceability of human rights and Article 50 of public interest litigation. Integral to this process is the interpretation of the law and the development of a comprehensive legal framework which not only aligns with judicial decisions but also advances reproductive justice in Africa. For litigants seeking to expand the justiciability of the right to health, strategic litigation remains a powerful tool. That's where civil society comes in, and we shall talk more about Afya na Haki and whose Center for Health, Human Rights and Development is in advancing this right. Utilizing the precedents that courts have made, especially regarding maternal and reproductive health, litigants can advocate for continuous expansion and enforcement of the right to health. However, maintaining continued engagement with courts is essential to ensuring that the right to maternal and reproductive health is fully realized and enforced. Dear participants, online and offline, most times when we talk about courts, we think about commercial transactions. We think about things that bring us money. But this session paints a human face to human rights, because we'll be looking at how do we safeguard the rights of women and girls and families to ensure that they enjoy maternal health rights in their full entirety, because sexual reproductive health rights is a full circle. And I'll tell you a story about sexual reproductive health rights and why I'm standing here today facilitating this special session. So, the main objective of this session, breakaway session, is to explore and discuss the role of courts in advancing maternal and reproductive health through collaborative efforts. Uganda Law Society has gently given us the space collaboratively under the Health and the Law cluster. This has been going on for over, I think, 6 years or 7. And there's a reason, because the theme for this year's annual law conference says, someone help me read it out. Could we see the theme? Do we have the theme somewhere? I think it's about adaptability, yeah? Pardon? Adaptability of the legal tides in terms of what's changing, the dynamics. Are we doing business as usual? Sorry about that. Yes, so that's the main objective. And then we expect to have an enhanced understanding of the legal mechanisms and precedents that contribute to the justiciability of the right to health, particularly in the context of maternal and reproductive health. Policy implications of judicial decisions regarding maternal and reproductive health, providing insights into how these decisions can influence public health policies and initiatives. Ladies and gentlemen and all, we cannot realize these rights if they're not enshrined in a statute or in a law, or if they're not acknowledged. And that's why we say that strategic litigation continues to play a critical role in influencing decisions that advance these rights that are not often understood. The third expected outcome is collaboration opportunities and knowledge sharing between legal experts, academia, policymakers, and health professionals to work towards advancing maternal and reproductive health rights through the judicial system. So, from our program, this session is proudly sponsored by Afya na Haki. Yes? Now, Afya na Haki is located in Uganda, and it dreams big. It was born out of a dream to seek Afrocentric solutions, okay, within the legal perspective. So they are interrogating the right to health and sexual reproductive health rights through examining our laws, the colonial laws, their efficiency and their interpretation to ensure that Ugandans fully enjoy and understand the right to health. And it's doing this through research, advocacy, and strategic networks. Currently, Afya na Haki is funding different partners under the LIRA project, which is litigating reproductive justice in Africa. And basically what this grant does is it supports local partners and NGOs to bring forward to the courts of law reproductive justice or reproductive health related cases. And when we're talking about reproductive health, it's difficult for you to detach like you cannot talk about reproductive health and not talk about the sexual part. And so the lineup of our panelists is going to be an interesting one. Like I said, it's going to have a multidiscipline, okay, of experts. For those who went to Makerere University and have attended several meetings, you could have interfaced with Professor Ben Twinomgisha. He's a professor of law, Makerere University, but also has moved a journey with Center for Health, Human Rights and Development as a board chair and now as a trustee of Afya na Haki. Professor Ben made us realize that you can actually move ideas from paper to reality. And so he supported the journey of advancing maternal and reproductive health rights by testing litigation, the tool to create precedents that acknowledge the right to health. The other panelist we shall have, or is in the room actually, is Her Worship Roslyn Nsenge. She's a Chief Magistrate. She's a Chief Magistrate. And her journey started with FIDA Uganda. So when we're talking about maternal and reproductive health rights, she brings in a different dimension in terms of us appreciating why judicial activism is important for us to bring justice to complicated issues around sexual gender-based violence, for example, and advancing reproductive health rights. You're very welcome, Professor Ben. Our sincere apologies for the delay. It was beyond us in the main sessions. And I had just said that for those who have not met Professor Ben, he's played an instrumental role in translating the law into actual practice. Professor Ben, we thank you so much for moving a journey with us, both through SEHAD and also Afya na Haki. And we look forward to hearing a wealth of your wisdom in these sessions. We already have online participants very active. We shall still keep filling the room in due course. Very welcome. Allow me also welcome Council Kenneth Sebabi. He is the Executive Director, Springs Public Interest Hub, but he's also an active advocate of the High Courts of Uganda. And he's also litigated strategic litigation cases, and he's worked hand in hand with the Center for Health, Human Rights and Development, and Afya na Haki. He will tell us more why he diversified beyond commercial courts, beyond commercial cases to actually advancing reproductive and maternal health rights. Then we also have a very senior medical officer within us from Ministry of Health, Dr. Migade Deogratias. You're very welcome. We thank you so much for sparing this time. And as someone also whispered that Dr. Mugahi may be on his way, so we'll have a bounty of ideas flowing as we deliberate. I thank you so much for coming, our dear panelists, and both physical and online participants. Thank you so much for joining us in this very important session. So I was making fun and saying I will start with a very interesting scenario. When I was about 9 years old, how many of us remember the song Let's Talk About Sex? Let's talk about sex, baby. Let's talk about all the good things, all the bad things. How many? I can see the faces. I got a beating of a lifetime from my mother. And she told me, what are you talking about? Sex? Sex? And here I am again boldly talking about sex. When I Googled years later, that song was actually a song used by a group called Pepper and Salt to advocate, to advance the HIV movement. They were preaching about people not being shy to talk about sex and issues around protection. And why am I talking about this? Within our setup culturally, you cannot say sex because the interpretation definitely goes to sexual intercourse. And the message is lost in translation. We have made it a taboo to talk about sexual and reproductive health rights because of our upbringing, the society that we've grown up in. Now, from a 9-year-old, I've translated into a teenager. Those are the phases of exploring where hormones are calling, and before you know it, you're trying out things. Before you know it, you probably have a UTI, a pregnancy. Before you know it, you don't know what to do because there's limited information. Then eventually, you get married and you have children. Those are maternal health rights now. And you reach there and they're telling you, no, you're going for a C-section. No, you're saying, no, I'm not ready. I don't have enough money. Before you know it, you have children. The experiences within the health facilities is another tale for another day. There are costs involved and all these experiences. And as you grow again, you translate from, the mid-30s to 40s and above. And it's a link, it's a chain, it continues. When you're talking about sexual reproductive health rights, it's a process, menstrual health management. You keep going in circles. Then there's postmenopause. Some people even get premenopause symptoms earlier. All these are sexual reproductive health rights related issues. So just to tell you that we're not going to be shy to talk about this, I thought I would play that song, Let's Talk About Sex, Baby. But since I have a full panel constituted here, allow me delve into the deeper discussions. And I will start with Professor Ben. Is that okay? Thank you. When we talk about the right to health, and specifically sexual reproductive health rights, I don't know how many of us have heard about these rights, first of all, and the practicability of taking these on in courts in terms of violations. So Professor Ben is going to help us appreciate, as a scholar of the right to health, how he translated the principles of law into actual courts to tell us that actually it is possible to take on these violations after you've understood or appreciated what these principles are from the perspective of the academia and the practical world. Over to you, Professor Ben.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dorothy. The participants here. I'm disappointed by the size of the audience. I don't know how many are on the online, which maybe points to the seriousness to which we attach to health matters. So I'm Ben Twinomugisha. I am a professor of law at Makerere University, chair of Center for Health Human Rights, chair board of trustees for Center for Health Human Rights and Development, and then appear na haki. But above all, I handle issues of theory and praxis for matters of health. If I understood your question well, I don't know whether you want me to talk about the right to health. Okay.
Yes, specifically in relation to sexual reproductive health rights.
Okay. So we've moved a journey in terms of understanding the conceptualization of health, including sexual and reproductive health. Way back in 1947, the WHO, World Health Organization, in its constitution, for the first time declared health as a fundamental human right, and went ahead to define health as a state of physical, mental, and social well-being rather than merely the absence of disease and infirmity. And in 1966, we had an international instrument, a treaty, building with the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, that is the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights in Article 12, enjoining states to guarantee the rights to the highest attainable standard of physical and mental health for its people. And in 1979, we had another landmark covenant specifically focusing on women's human rights health, including provision of family planning services, antenatal care services, labor and delivery care services, including emergency obstetric care and postnatal services, which have been elaborated upon by the Committee on Economic, on elimination of all forms of discrimination against women in a number of recommendations. I'm just giving a summary of this. Then we had various conferences like at Tehran on women's human rights. We had in 1993 the first time international community beyond human rights as we know the concept to recognize women's human rights as human rights. And when you hear me talking about women's rights, I add the word human to emphasize to everybody that women are human beings. So I say women's human rights. I'm saying that to the Gen Z and others, it may be strange to say women are human beings. Women just voted recently. Women began owning property just recently. So in 1994, which is a landmark year, we got at Cairo through what we call the International Conference on Population and Development, where a paradigm shift was marked, moving from focus on population reduction. Economists were worried that women were giving birth to so many children, and the increment in population was overtaking the resources. You remember Malthusian theory. So although there had been a revolutionary innovation in terms of appeal for women to be able to control their fertility, this was viewed in terms of controlling population growth. But at Cairo in 1994, a paradigm shift was marked to show that women should not be viewed merely as objects of development, but they should be looked at as subjects of development who are able to exercise their own agency and equitably participate in the development process, in the design, implementation, monitoring, and evaluation of policies. So at Cairo, a number of developments took place. Sexual health was tackled, but largely reproductive health, including the right to have sex and to decide who to have sex with, the right to bodily autonomy, the right to bodily integrity, the rights for a woman to access abortion services where they are legal in their jurisdiction. Because of the opposition of the Roman Catholic Church and Islam circles, the abortion issue was coached in that way. And I'm going to move so fast. So during Cairo, they talked about reproductive rights. But a group of a group of Afro-American women and other women of color from even Asia questioned why countries like Uganda in the third world should champion simply access to safe abortion care, yet there are more serious challenges that move beyond that reproductive right, even including family planning, etc. You can talk about access to contraception, you can talk about family planning, but you find there are more critical issues that need attention, such as access to labor and delivery care. So these women came up with a relatively new concept, but building on the concept of reproductive rights, So they came up with the concept of reproductive justice, which has three components. The right to have a child, and that one covers issues of maternal health care, neonatal care, newborn care, questions of antenatal care, labor and delivery care, emergency obstetric care, postnatal care, issues of family planning and contraception, issues of sexual health. But then they said, secondly, the right not to have a child. You can get a woman who may decide not to have a child, including nuns, for example, for religious reasons. You can have a man who wants to become a priest. You can have a lesbian woman who doesn't want to have children. Okay? So they said a right to have, not to have a child. Then thirdly, which is very critical, the right to have a child in safe and healthy environments. So that you see, if there is a maternal health facility, can this woman afford the cost of that facility? Can we talk about the cultural and other barriers that prevent this woman from utilizing contraceptives? So the overall picture of sexual and reproductive health rights needs to be looked at from the point of view of reproductive justice. And even to recognize that all women and men are human beings, regardless of their sexual orientation and gender identity. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor, for ably giving us a synopsis of the evolving legal and ethical landscape of sexual and reproductive health rights off your fingertips. Did we all feel that flow? Thank you so much. And Professor, you're asking for online participants. We are over 50. Yes, so we have a good presence online, isn't it? Yeah. So thank you so much for opening up the discussions. And oftentimes when we talk about sexual reproductive health rights, there's a lot of contestation. And I like the fact that you've already touched on some of these issues and done so from purely a professional eye, because most of us who work in this area of rights are often caught between, you know, our personal perceptions, our religious beliefs, our morals, and social norms, you know, that surround us and practices. But it comes to say, the more you get educated and the more you get exposed to these rights, the more you appreciate that, you know, the enjoyment of human rights is not solely, you know, hinged on what your perceptions look like. So thank you so much, Professor. And just to say that Afya na Haki also offers trainings and capacity enhancement for those who would be interested in building their capacities on sexual and reproductive health rights and the right to health in general. So please look out for Afya na Haki on your socials, www.afyanahaki.org. But you can also check on SEHAD's socials to appreciate more of the work that we do under the right to health, and specifically sexual and reproductive health rights. Yes, allow me to turn the mic to definitely her worship, Roslyn Nsenge. And based on the foundation of what Professor has shared with us, we've all acknowledged that these rights, and we just don't dream about them, but they're actually rights that are born through different instruments that Professor has quoted. As a judicial officer, someone seated from the bench, what are your observations in terms of, you know, the realization of these rights over the years of your role as a judicial officer? How have you interfaced with some of these health-related cases, specifically around sexual and reproductive health rights?
Okay. Thank you so much, our moderator. Thank you so much, fellow panelists and everybody who has attended physically, and also those who are online. Thank you so much for taking off time to join us in this very, very serious issue called the health rights, which many people actually do not know that once your rights to health are not protected, then you don't have life. You don't have life if the right to health is not protected. So I would want to start from where Professor Ben has stopped. It is, of course, very, very difficult to speak after Professor, but I'll try. So I want to share with you a very small story from the work I do. I sit on the bench. I've been doing judicial work for the last 13 years. So when I see a room as almost it's half empty, and we are discussing such a very crucial issue, the right to health, you don't have life. Okay. You don't have life if you don't have health. So I want to start on a very unfortunate note. This is a true story that I handled a matter myself where a nurse seated in a certain clinic was changing positive HIV results to negative. So this nurse, you would go and pay her some amount of money. Usually she charged between 150 to 500,000 depending. So for maybe the youthful people who would want to get married, they will go to this clinic and somebody would have gone in advance and told her that, my status is, I'm HIV positive, but when I come with my partner, make sure you give us negative results. So this happened. Somebody gave birth only to be told, but you have HIV. And she was like, no, impossible. So when they investigated, it turned out that the nurse was actually doing this. This nurse was brought before my court. This is a true story for people who are not interested in the right to health. Let us start there. And eventually, the nurse pleaded guilty, and she had been doing this for the last 10 years. So the reason why I'm starting with this is that any one of us would have fallen a victim. So when it comes to the right to health, I think we should give it the attention that it deserves. Because Dorothy has been talking about sex. Because now, why are people testing? Because after testing, people are getting married, and what happens next? Reproductive health. Reproductive health. So the topic I'm going to talk about today is the role of the court in advancing reproductive health rights and maternal rights in Uganda. What has the court got to do? And I think from the trend, what we are seeing, exactly the fact that we're actually having very few lawyers here in the room, it means it starts with us as advocates, then we join the bench. You're joining the bench, but you're not appreciating the significance of the right to health. And that's why we are going to have questions of, is it justiciable? These rights are not justiciable. And why are you raising this question of rights not being justiciable? It's because you have not taken off time, and all you're raising is that the right to health is nowhere in the Constitution. It's actually not in the substantive chapters of the Constitution. So let me start from there. What has this got to do with the courts? What is the role of court in all this? So I'll share with you just two cases. We've been having some progressive jurisprudence. There is hope. Yeah, there is hope. It is all not lost. Sehud and Afia na Haki, they've done, I think they have played their part through litigating, strategic litigation, in a way that they've taken matters to court. And I'll start with the progressive ones. There is one, I'll start with the High Court case. It was Sehud and three others versus the Attorney General and Mulago Hospital, where a lady goes to hospital, a public hospital, the main hospital in Uganda, delivers twins. And so what happens to the twins? She's only given one baby. And she's like, but I gave birth to two babies. Where is the second one? And she's given a dead baby. And she's told the other one died. So a DNA is conducted. And what happens? What turns out? Actually, that was not her baby. Now the question arises, where did the second baby go? So whose fault is it? So if you say that this has got nothing to do with the courts have to come in to fill in the gaps to answer these questions. Questions of implementation, questions, when this matter was taken before court, I think it was Sehud took this matter before High Court. Luckily, we had a very, very progressive judge, Justice Mugambe, and she came up with structural interdicts. She's like, no. Let us put the political question aside. The political doctrine question that, the judiciary should not go into questions of implementation, questions of policy, questioning the status quo. Where did the baby go? And she says, no, there should be some kind of there should be some kind of protection of mothers and their babies in what? In public hospitals. So she came up with structural interdicts, and she made declarations that, Mulago Hospital, you did this and this, you are wrong here. So I think where she came up with, she was also she tried to bring on board judicial activism and being innovative. And she's like, I think what Mulago Hospital should do, they should report back on any other steps they are taking to ensure that we don't lose babies anymore in Mulago Hospital. Of course, the enforcement is a little bit problematic. But what I'm saying, that is not for the courts. The duty of the courts is to fill in the gaps, to highlight the problems, that this is wrong, this was done, this can be done better. So when it comes to enforcement, when it comes to implementation, I think that is not for the judiciary, but I would rather that we play our part as judicial officers. So that was a progressive decision coming in from Justice Mugambe. Then another decision was, I think, recently celebrated, but this is, it was Sehud versus the Attorney General, 2011. Now this matter, it's been filed in court, in the Constitutional Court in 2011. And the judges, the justices in the Constitutional Court are like, no, we're not going to interfere with the executive. Those are policy issues. Those are political question issues that we cannot interfere with. And the petitioners, this was Sehud, they are saying that no, the public hospitals don't have medication. They don't have anything to help the maternal mothers. They don't have anything got to do with the babies, the newborn babies. That no, that is not a question for us. So the matter was dismissed. Sehud was not happy. You have a right to appeal. So they appealed before Supreme Court. And Supreme Court, I think they were also baffled. They were like, is it a question of interpretation? Is it a question of what? They pushed back the matter. They sent it back to the Constitutional Court and said, no, Constitutional Court, it's not just a question under Article 137. It is not just a question of interpretation. I think you should dig deeper and see if there were any infringements in the right to health. But rather, the justices were of the view, we don't know where the right to health, that is what Professor Ben has been talking about earlier. Does it lie within the NOP's objectives, or it is in the substantive chapters? So it was sent back, and I think this is a celebrated decision coming in from the Constitutional Court, where Justice Cheborian, actually, the entire Constitutional Court now says that actually the right to health, anonymously they held that there should be protection of the right to health. So those are two decisions coming in. So meaning there is hope. But again, the question is, it goes back to what the moderator has been talking about. That so what happens, especially to us at the lower bench? I sit on the lower bench as a chief magistrate. And I can tell you that as a chief magistrate, the matters that come before us, they don't come under the civil court. They come in the criminal court under child stealing. Child stealing, again, these are questions of policy. How can you say that a baby, an infant, has been kidnapped from hospital, something like that? So at the end of the day, we are handling the criminal aspect, but we are not looking at the policy issues. How can an entire hospital, realistically speaking, and you are proud to say that someone walked in, the lady was from theater, and they stole the baby. And so they have brought this lady to be punished. Where did this person pass in the first place? So really, when we're talking about the right to health, I think we should give it the significance and the importance that it requires. Then also, there's also another question of procuring. These are the cases that are brought before the lower courts. And kindly remember that the lower courts we are in touch with most of the communities. Very, very few people have their matters before High Court. And most of the lawyers here know that actually most matters are handled by the lower bench. So the lower bench we don't have, unless if you're being an activist, you're practicing judicial activism, and you're being innovative in one way or another, that you will try to broaden the decision at the end of the day. So they have brought you a lady that she's been charged with procuring an abortion. Now the question is, okay, have they looked at the Maputo Protocol? Okay, Uganda is a signatory with reservations, of course, but again, we are saying that in our Ugandan law, we have where, if you have to if somebody has to save the life of a baby, we have exceptions. But in the criminal justice system, that is not considered. They get you and that's it. They produce you, they arraign you before the courts of law, and they say, can you punish this person? So I think, time up. So that is it. Thank you so much. I can stop there for now.
Okay, a round of applause for her worship, Roslyn. You can tell a passionate advocate from the tone. Do you agree? When she's speaking, it flows from the soul, beyond just the role of a judicial officer. She talks and you feel it. And you know that if a case came before her worship, definitely should give it an extra lens through the justice lens of the gender issues, to ensure that justice is, delivered. So thank you so much for sharing that experience. Definitely we have a lot to do in terms of bringing cases before the courts of law. Allow me acknowledge the presence of Dr. Mugahi Richard, and just to say congratulations to you upon the appointment of Commissioner, correct me, Reproductive, Maternal and Newborn from the Health Department. Yes, we need him. We've walked a journey with him in terms of advancing our reproductive and maternal health, and probably he may even join us at the panel. You're very welcome. Allow me also welcome the physical participants. The room is filling up. We were worried initially, but we are catching up. Thank you so much for coming through. We don't take your time for granted. Thank you very much. We have members from LDC right in here and senior positions. Mrs. Annette Mutabingwa, thank you so much for coming in. We have members from the banking sector. Jennifer, thank you so much. We need a diversity. We have Gen Z representation at the back there. Say hi. Yes, and other members of the legal profession. Yes, Salma, thank you so much for making it. Salima. Yes, Salima is the Vice President, right, at Center for Reproductive Health. Right, yes, so we are very honored to have you in the room. We also have a member from the Uganda Law Society Council, Secretary. Thank you so much for making it. I may not get all your names, but I appreciate your presence in the room. The Lord said, where two or more are gathered, we are a crowd. And not to underscore the online participants who are online from 2. They persevered and they stayed on. Thank you so much for coming. That was her worship, Roslyn, sharing with us her experiences. Allow me to cross over to Counsel Kenneth Sebabi. Kenneth is a seasoned lawyer. He has seen the floodgates of commercial transactions, and he's also entered the human rights circles in terms of advocacy, and specifically using litigation as a tool to advance sexual reproductive health rights. Counsel, you've heard from Professor Ben. You've also heard from her worship. Please take us through the practical aspects, what your experiences have been in navigating the complexities within the legal system as a practitioner, day-to-day practitioner, in terms of bringing these cases before courts of law. Is it a worthwhile experience?
Thank you, Dorothy. Colleagues, Kenneth Sewapi is my name. I am Executive Director of Springs Public Interest Hub, and I also do litigation with the Springs Advocates, where I'm a partner. The colleagues present and those online, welcome you to this session. Yes, it's a worthwhile journey, and it's a journey that I started 8 years ago when I got a call on a weekend, and I was touched by the story because this was a couple that had walked in Mulago Hospital to give birth, and indeed delivered a baby girl, but were discharged without a baby. Not even a baby or dead one. And the questions were, where is the baby? And the hospital was like, we also don't know where the baby is. So they go to police, they run left and right, and they have no help. Until a friend referred them to me on a Saturday, and they called me. I was home, but I was touched by the story and left home to meet them. And when I met them, the couple was crying, especially the lady. She was like, I was pregnant, but now I have no baby. And it was difficult. No amount of words would console her or would take the pain away. So we engage Mulago, we write to Mulago, they don't respond. The police did not help. So we're compelled to take out an action against Mulago, the Attorney General, and the midwife, she was called Viola Namatov. And when we appeared before her worship, Esther Nambayo, as she was then, they were compelled to, first of all, respond and answer why they did not have the baby, whether dead or alive, because not even the records in the mortuary would account for the baby. And then the session started, they don't come. Then one time she made it mandatory for them to appear. And for the very first time, we saw a whole team of 9 people headed by the principal administrator, Mr. David Mwamanya then, including senior midwives, the nurses, even the midwife that attended to the couple, to explain where the baby was, and they didn't have answers. So it was painful, but they were compelled to actually settle, and they entered into a consent judgment for, I think they paid a couple of 50 million shillings. But of course, at the end of the day, that could not atone for the loss, yeah? It was only meant maybe to comfort them a bit. But you can see it was a difficult one, and we came in, and that's when I started my journey in reproductive justice. It is a journey that is progressive. I must say we can't. I must say that the efforts by eloquent people like Professor Ben, Sehad, and Afia Nahaki must not go unappreciated. They have been champions in productive justice. They have set the platform for advocates to learn. They have set a platform for courts to intervene and safeguard the rights to health. I remember in petition 16, Justice Cheborian reaffirmed the right to health and underscored the fact that every state should go ahead to safeguard and protect these rights and ensure that women have access to reproductive justice. So navigating the complexity therein is, there are quite a number of complexities involved in. First, there's the litigants themselves. There's limited knowledge on rights by the litigants themselves, and then there's limited access to the defenders of those rights. These atrocities happen, ladies and gentlemen, day in, day out. Babies are lost, and no answers are given to the mothers or the fathers of these babies. But you can't be everywhere, yeah? You can't be everywhere, and then these litigants do not have access to you wherever they are. How I should mention about the number of lawyers in this room, you will appreciate that not a large section of lawyers are involved into reproductive justice. Oftentimes we are swayed by the commercial transactions, and we look at this as not very lucrative in nature. But it takes a call, it takes a personal touch and feeling for one to say, let me maybe put aside the commercial transactions and let me pay attention to reproductive justice. It is not common for everybody, but it's a worthwhile journey, and we implore everybody to come on board, the lawyers, the judiciary, the litigants themselves, to ensure that we have a collective movement and as far as ensuring the access to justice, access to reproductive justice is concerned. The other challenges involved, how I should talk about enforceability of these judgments and decisions of court. Oftentimes when the courts make decisions, like she said, they may stop at that. And it is our duty, ladies and gentlemen, to see how these judgments or decisions are realized into justice for these litigants. The case in point that I've just talked about, even when it was a consent judgment, it took a lot of time for Attorney General, for government to actually pay this 15 million to that couple. So you find that enforcement is a big challenge. that we collectively need to devise solutions for, so that to ensure that the litigants who come to seek reproductive justice and are successful, they have fruits of their judgment. It is very critical to them, it is very critical to us, and even to court that passed the decision, I think there's satisfaction when they learn that the decisions have been implemented to the rightful beneficiaries. Beyond that, of course, there's limited training and knowledge, even for the defenders of these rights. The number of lawyers, again, in this room speaks to that. We need to have more trainings. We need to have more members onboarded to fight and secure reproductive justice for the litigants that suffer day in, day out. Then, of course, beyond that, we also have a challenge of inadequate domestic legislation. The laws that we have are restrictive in nature and largely punitive. When it comes to the right to the call to whether to have a baby or not to have a baby, we have no access to safe legal abortion because we have no law that regulates the abortion or termination of pregnancy. In fact, there is a petition to seek to speak to that we should have a law regulating the termination of pregnancy. So oftentimes we are compelled to look at the international instruments. We will look at the MATERNAL protocol. We look at the CEDAW Convention on Elimination of Discrimination Against All Forms of the CEDAW Convention, yeah, the Convention on Elimination of elimination of all forms of discrimination against women. So you find that, and again, when it comes to exposure and training, again there is a gap in that requires to be done. Then finally, of course, even the bench is not immune to this lack of sufficient knowledge in as far as reproductive justice is concerned. So oftentimes you may appear before somebody and he does not appreciate where you're coming from, and yet it is critical that the judicial officer appreciates the predicament or the injustice suffered by this woman, by this man, in the course of attainment of reproductive justice. So I think I can stop it for now.
A round of applause for Counsel Kenneth. The interesting part about advocating for sexual and reproductive health rights is you have to believe in it, or you're willing to unlearn, relearn, for you to be able to appreciate that indeed these are rights. Professor said is that he was talking about women's rights and their class of, the dignity in terms of history has had it that we are secondary citizens. And most times when you look at, or when you navigate the law, it actually shows you that we're not really considered as humans with their own rights, bodily autonomy, choice issues. And so if you're interpreting laws always, it also takes a lot of effort for you to assert yourself to be able to demand for these rights. Like Counsel says, Counsel Kane, when you're talking about reproductive health rights, even just litigating them, when you're looking at the laws, for example, the law on abortion right now, you struggle. You struggle because the legal and policy frameworks are not enabling. And so when you go and borrow from the international or regional conventions or treaties or general comments that talk about the right to health or sexual reproductive health rights, you're still limited. And most times courts take time to actually deliberate on these cases, not because probably they don't want to, but they're also stuck. They don't know where to start from. And so you'll find that the adjudication of these cases gets frustrating, and it takes efforts for you to keep showing up. And so I think it has to have collective efforts from different stakeholders for us to actually be friends to court, for courts to be able to come up to decisions that speak to the needs of the country or the communities, specifically women and girls. So that will take me now to the next panelist, and that is Dr. Migadide Gracious. He's a senior medical officer, Ministry of Health, and I will assume probably, or he will tell us more about his frontline experiences, especially on these issues that we talked about. But would like to hear from you, one, if
the Ministry of Health's policy framework appreciates sexual reproductive health rights from a human rights lens or perspective, and to tell us the efforts that are being undertaken within the Ministry of Health to ensure that the implementation of sexual reproductive health rights related programs are being realized in terms of advancing sexual and reproductive health. I've said so much, but I'm also overwhelmed in terms of my entry point with you. But I know that you play a critical role in our joint collaborations in advancing sexual and reproductive health rights in Uganda. Over to you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. It's really a pleasure to speak at this event, and an event bringing together colleagues in the Uganda Law Society. I would also want to appreciate my fellow panelists who have spoken before and have introduced this concept of reproductive health justice. Just to begin this, we, as Minister of Health and specifically the Reproductive and Child Health Department, and I'm glad that my commissioner is around, we have been working closely with the teams that have been advocating for better reproductive health rights, and specifically in matters regarding petition 16. And what we have actually appreciated from this landmark ruling is that advocating for using courts or the judicial system is an opportunity to use the legal system as an advocate or as an advocacy platform for improving the rights of women. Like you're aware, most of you, we got a ruling and tasks that the Minister of Health was supposed to follow up on following this ruling, and I would just like to mention a few of them and also highlight how far we have moved in terms of ensuring that we align to what actually the teams that made this ruling requested that the Minister to work on. Mainly 4 areas that Minister of Health was supposed to work on. One was to regularly make an audit of the current status of maternal and newborn health in our country and provide a report, and then advocate for the increment in the budget allocated for maternal and newborn health. The other area was on increasing the skills of health workers caring for mothers and newborns through trainings, but also through ensuring that we have professional ethics maintained to the highest level as we're caring for these mothers and newborns. And of course, our worship and the colleague have mentioned a few of the stories that have come through court, and these speak to the challenges that exist within our systems, within our facilities, and we are glad that through this ruling, advocacy, a lot of support and increased advocacy came to the Ministry of Health, and also working closely with our other stakeholders, we've been able to work on several key areas to ensure that we address these challenges that were highlighted. So the very first area that we have strengthened in terms of strengthening sexual and reproductive health, and specifically for maternal and newborn, is accountability. We have strengthened accountability for all mothers and newborns. Currently, as a country, we are able to count and account for all mothers and newborns who have died, and specifically looking at the underlying issues as to why these deaths have happened. We have national engagements happening twice a week. That is Monday and Thursday, and I know some of you have been part of these engagements. And with the leadership of the commissioner, we're able to look at why any death that has happened in the country and the issues that could be behind this, looking at all the different areas right from the facility and community, and working with the different stakeholders at both national and regional referral hospitals and also in the communities to see that we get solutions to these issues. And at the end of the year, we also compile a report, and as I'm speaking now, there's already a team that is working on seeing that we actually look at all this information that has come up to analyze it and come up with solutions, but also share widely with all stakeholders. We know that issues of survival for the mother and newborn are everyone's responsibility, right from the health facilities, health workers, but also members in the community. So the other area that we have worked on in response to that petition 16 is providing strategic guidance. We've come up with guidelines, protocols, to see that we build, we provide reference to our frontline health workers who are providing these services to increase their competency. We know that some of the issues that came out were related to skills and knowledge of the health workers. And again, just linked to this, we've been able to conduct trainings and capacity building efforts across the country to see that health workers are competent enough to care for these mothers and newborns. But again, we have adopted several new recommendations. For example, I know Professor mentioned about the aspect of antenatal care, postnatal care, and we have been able to move in the right direction. Right now, we have adopted the guidance on ensuring that every mother attends antenatal care at least 8 times to increase our chances of ensuring that we get these complications early enough and prevent any poor outcomes. The other area that I can mention about again, we are very grateful for this advocacy. You can all note that the staffing norms for health workers within our facilities was increased, and this, if well implemented, you know that it will play a big role in bridging the gaps that existed, especially areas where we know that lives were lost because of fewer hands caring for these mothers and newborns. But also, with these numbers, you know that we can even have more capacity, and more numbers can be reached in the different RH service provision, not from family planning. When you have more health workers, you can be able to provide more services in this country. The other area is about dignity and respect. Beyond losing life, we know that these mothers, as they're passing through the system, they need to be cared for with dignity, respect, and utmost care. As the Department of Reproductive and Child Health, we have adopted what we call the Respectful Maternity Care Guidelines, RMC, and we are on course on ensuring that all our health workers who are caring for mothers and children within our facilities are taken through this model, this practice of ensuring that as these women are in our facilities, they are cared for with all the respect. But also in the pre-training institutions, we want to see that we incorporate this and have all health workers who are coming out improve and provide care in a more respectful and dignified approach, so that the mothers can have a positive experience as they are going through the health system. And then finally, as I'm concluding, we have also increased on our efforts to see that we scale up more services. One of the ways we have done that is through working again with different stakeholders. Several units have been set up, maternity units. For example, with support from World Bank, we're able to construct up to 81 maternity units. We know that this played a big role in increasing access to maternal and newborn health services. But also we have adopted newer medicines and technologies that promote survival for mothers and newborns. A case in point, we know that the biggest challenge has been the biggest cause of bleeding in of death of mothers in our country has been bleeding. We have been able to incorporate newer drugs that can actually bring down these causes, but also even for the newborns, issues to do with breathing. There are new commodities that have been adopted, which we think, once scaled up, will again contribute to this to these efforts. And with all this, we have noted a lot of improvement. I know, despite the challenges, but we have noted a lot of improvement over the years. And from our recent UDHS report, we know that we are able to reduce maternal mortality from 336 to 189 per 100,000 live births. That's roughly from around 14 mothers dying to around 8 to 9 per day. Yes, very many mothers are still dying, but at least there's progress that has been made. And we know that we're working together with everyone, and especially advocating for rights and advocating for more funding and resources, we shall be able to achieve our targets. And then number two, again, with that advocacy, we are able to increase budget for health. Specifically this year, we got an increment of up to 79 billion to cater for more commodities. This includes reproductive maternal health commodities. And we know that, again, this has come through advocacy. And like I mentioned as I was starting, for us, we look at this petition 16 as a tool, as a mechanism of advocating for more support and ensuring that more mothers survive, rather than looking at it as a way of coming after us, coming after the system. So that's what I can quickly respond. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you so much. I'll start with your concluding remark on you are looking at petition 16 not as a police tool, but as an opportunity to improve service provision within the country, and specifically let's say reproductive health rights, especially maternal and newborn. We've been nodding our heads. There's a lot of beautiful narrative, and I've seen Dr. Mugahi in agreement when Dr. Deo was speaking. But most importantly, I saw Professor Ben really nod harder. And I think, being a main petitioner of petition 16, ladies and gentlemen, you're seeing the case itself right in front of you. I think he's reflecting and saying it was worth the journey. It took over 8 years to realize this positive landmark ruling, ladies and gentlemen. And it wasn't an easy journey. So allow me bounce back, but thank you so much for really accounting to us and appreciating that, indeed, strategic litigation is a tool that helps us fasten our seatbelts to provide better services for our population. So we thank you so much for cooperating and not seeing SEHAD as a policing tool, but as a partner that is interested in complementing the existing efforts, but even so in a much bigger way, because it is collaborative efforts that give us results. We cannot work as islands. So we're very happy to hear those great improvements. Although I'll come back. About 2 weeks ago, there was a headline on teenage pregnancies and teenage mothers who are dying. There were high rates, actually. So it was trickling my mind in terms of what the policy environment is looking like within ministry. And I knew there were silent issues. Teenage mothers, pregnancy, deaths, the unspoken silent issues of unsafe abortions, and what we can do about them. I'll come back later. Professor Ben, you have really moved a journey with us, specifically SEHAD and AHAKI, in realizing maternal and reproductive health rights. I'd just like you to take us through the journey of litigations. What were those critical lessons that stood out for you in advancing these rights before courts of law? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dorothy. Today is my birthday.
Oh.
There is no cake here.
Professor, we're going to sing for you. Let's first take a break and appreciate this special life. To you, happy birthday to you. Without this day, we would not have such a brilliant mind
So
here.
by the grace of God, I made 65 years. And in my face, Psalm 139, verse 16, I'm told that all the days I have on this earth are numbered, and that God knew me even when I was forming in my mother's womb. But that does not close my eyes to the fact that women are dying in this country. He has told you about 189 women are dying per 100,000 live births. And I'm happy that due to the intervention that we did in 2011 through petition 16, following the death of a woman giving us life in Arua, and we sat and said, let's take government to court for failure or omission to provide essential maternal health commodities, goods and services to those who are unable by their own means to provide for themselves. And I'm happy about this judgment. I'll take just a few more minutes.
Absolutely, okay, birthday boy.
Yeah, so as I celebrate 65 years, I look back as one of the milestones in my life when in 2009 I started a course called Health and the Law in Makerere University that has given birth to a multitude of soldiers at the front line to champion not only for reproductive health generally, but sexual and reproductive health rights in particular. When you hear these questions of abortion, some of you, I know you want to get out of this room. But I can assure you that you need to go deeper and reflect on some of these matters. 26% of that maternal mortality rate in this country is due to unsafe abortion, where these girls of ours are going into back strict mechanisms, including using coat hangers, battery cells, swallowing a lot of aspirin. You can't believe it. You cannot believe it until you listen to stories of some of these girls. To the extent that even now teenage pregnancies, I don't know whether you read newspapers, you people. I don't know what we are going to do. About 28% people from the commissioner is here. And these are real figures. 28% teenage pregnancy rate, including in the rural areas where girls are being forced into marriage at the age of 12, 13, 14. The age of sexual debate, first sexual encounter among some of our young girls is 10, as low as 10, 11, 12. We are shunning comprehensive sexuality education. We are failing to talk to our girls. And I'm saying this openly, knowing that I'm even online. We are talking about pregnancies, girls becoming pregnant. We are talking about something that we grew up not even hearing so much, incest. What's happening with this society? Fathers having sex with their daughters, brothers having sex with their sisters, ending up with children who unfortunately we now call unwanted children. Not just unplanned, but unwanted children. We have forgotten the fact that these children need to continue with their education, because statistics exist to show that the higher the woman gets educated, the girl gets educated, the more independent or the more enlightened and capable of surviving on her own, that one occurs. So we need to look at these issues seriously. So when council here talks about a petition which is now in the Constitutional Court, and I don't have regrets about that, I'm one of the parties, because Article 22, sub-Article 2 of the Constitution says, no person shall terminate the life of an unborn child except as may be authorized by law. During the Constituent Assembly debate, Justice Mulenga, the late, Chief Justice Katurebe, and many others, debated this issue during the Constituent Assembly and said, we have the data here, public health data. Girls are dying, etc., etc. But we must balance the rights of the unborn child, and an unborn child has a right. Okay? But are there instances where termination of pregnancy can be allowed? Can't we have the law continuing to criminalize abortion? But are there instances, for example, like that incest, like a high level of deformity, for us to debate these issues so that we see how we can, for example, operationalize Article 14 of the Maputo Protocol, that is the protocol, the African Charter on Human and People's Rights, on the rights of women in Africa, where medical abortion is allowed for purposes of covering those things like incest and some instances of sexual violence. I know these are highly emotive, sensitive issues, but I want you to open your eyes, and for the parents who are here, let's talk to our children about sexuality issues. Otherwise, others are going to speak to these children on our behalf. Having said that, and I came in this room intending it, has not simply dropped in this, intending it. So having said this, petition 16 of 2011 has brought up those consequences, the impact he has talked about, and which I'm very happy about. I encourage the advocates who are here to move beyond petitioning civil and political rights to go into the area of the right to health. Petition 16:1, it gave us confidence that the right to health is now firmly established in our jurisprudence. Why? The court said that the directive principles of state policy and the national objectives in our constitution, which have been strengthened by Article 8A of the Constitution, and especially Objective 20 on access to health services, including social services, including health, and Objective 20 on access to medical services, that these objectives are justiciable. And increasingly in our jurisprudence, we are seeing courts, not only the Constitutional Court and the Supreme Court, but even the High Court, applying national objectives. When I was starting that course of health law, the question was whether these objectives are even relevant in our jurisprudence. Justice Egona and Tende, they were struggling with that, but now clearly that judgment brought it out. Number two, petition 16 gave us the position that international law international instruments are applicable in Uganda. When you read that judgment, unlike South Africa or Kenya, where there are provisions that allow direct application of international law, the Constitutional Court went to one of the objectives that says Uganda shall respect foreign obligations. Shall respect its foreign obligations. And they interpreted in that the obligation to respect international norms as contained in international instruments, of course, including that saving provision on treaties before 1995. Finally, the Constitutional Court came up strongly to apply what we call General Comment number 14 of 2000 by the Committee on Economic, Social, Cultural Rights, saying, one, that although the government can progressively realize the right to health, the maximum available of level of state resources, it has two obligations: to eliminate discrimination in the field of access to health care, and secondly, the obligation to take steps that must be deliberate, concrete, and targeted. It came up with the position, I'm about to finish on this. It came up with the position that the government must ensure that maternal health care commodities, goods, and services are available, accessible, acceptable, and of good quality. And finally, in rare cases, the Constitutional Court in that lead judgment by Justice Cheborion, and we know precedent as lawyers, applied with approval the judgment by Justice Mugambe in the baby theft case that Council has talked about. As an old man, 65 young, not old, very happy that I have worked with my former students who have been frontline workers in this area. I do not have any regrets that they have broken down barriers, cultural, religious, and ethical, to put the woman at the center of reproductive justice as a woman with agency, a woman with rights, and a woman with bodily integrity and autonomy. Thank you very much.
Wow. Professor Ben, actually, no. I think the tone is right, because you're as real as you can be. And I think when we hear voices from you speaking about sexuality education boldly, when we hear from you speaking about the hidden discussions on teenage pregnancies, unsafe abortions, it's reassuring that these rights are justiciable, these social issues are real, and that we need an open system, a legal mechanism that is willing to litigate these issues with an open mind, but also invite friends of court and experts to actually further appreciate these gray areas to be able to give us justice. So we thank you so much, Professor. And ladies and gentlemen in here, the Center for Health, Human Rights and Development and Afya na Haki were born from the dream Professor Ben had in law school, health and the law. So let's really give him an applaud. He deserves that recognition. And why I say this is Dr. Mlumba and the other two colleagues, Kabanda and Viola. Professor, sorry.
Dr. Moses Murumba was recently appointed Associate Professor at the University of North Texas in the Science Department.
You can see the heights that we are going. The Ugandan flag is flying across the borders because of this passionate work. Thank you so much for that update. And why I think this is important is these were students in Professor Ben's class, Health and the Law cluster. When they got out there, they didn't go to law firms. Maybe they had an idea that they wanted to go to law firms, but they said, why don't we test this theory we've learned in class? Why don't we open up an NGO or a civil society organization that tests these principles? And that's how Petition 16 was born. And that's how advocating for sexual reproductive health rights was born. And Professor Ben has continued to move this journey with us. We bless the Lord for sustaining your life, Professor, and for looking sweet 16, not 65. So we are humbled, and in this space, as he keeps saying, I'm open to learn. Imagine Professor saying he's open to learn. Who are we in this day and era pushing away knowledge? You know? And I like the openness, because when you're talking about sexual reproductive health rights, it's important to have an open mind set, but most importantly, not to shy away from these issues, because the more we don't talk about them, the more we get into a lot of issues, especially with our young generation. Access to information is everywhere. So if you don't give our young people the right information, age appropriate, they will Google. And Google will definitely give them everything that they need. So as parents, but also as lawyers here, let's be very deliberate about this topic that is dear to us. Thank you so much again, Professor Ben. And I wanted to bring in Dr. Mugahi, but I think he's stepped out. Okay. We'll still have him give us a commentary here and there, but just to say that the online participants are with us, and they're really saying thank you so much for this wonderful session. So you can see that now these issues are becoming relatable out there. And someone says, can Professor rally academics to champion the efforts to revisit the legal framework on abortion by bringing legislators on board to amend the law? So you can imagine this advocacy is already creating an appetite. Oftentimes when we're advocating for this kind of work, we are looked at as immoral, unchristian. When we're talking about comprehensive sexuality education, information access, you're corrupting young minds to go have sex. Because you can't blame the society. These are issues that you're brought up, to respect, to fear, and you don't question beyond, So there's been a lot of misconceptions out there, but we also have to be as realistic as possible. Young people are going to have sex, and they're having sex. Protected or not is another question. Are they willing to bear the circumstances of, the impact of their actions, whether it was by consent, by choice, or by duress, is another issue. And remember, ladies and gentlemen, these laws that we are dealing with are archaic British laws. The colonialists were here to create more labor force. So the more we produced, the more they were benefiting. So let's just have that at the back of our minds. And so I'm going to come back to, I was going to capture Dr. Mugahi a bit, but I'll probably give him a minute to settle in. Dr. Mugahi, are you ready to be captured? Okay, please, you could take a seat. There's an extra seat there. Okay, thank you so much for coming in. And I think before I do a second round to the other panelists, I'm very interested in hearing from the Commissioner, Reproductive, Maternal and Newborn, on the issue of teenage pregnancies. Yes. On the issue of teenage pregnancies, but especially the Ministry of Health programming, especially at policy level, in tackling some of the silent issues around teenage pregnancies and unexplainable deaths that are resulting from unsafe abortions, if these are familiar concepts. Doctor, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dorothy, and my colleagues here at the panel, and our dear listeners or participants. The issue of I want to pick a lot from what Professor just mentioned. I'm sure he has stepped out, but there's a lot that we pick from what Professor has just mentioned. And teen pregnancies, it's really a huge problem for Uganda. Just to give the whole issue a context, we have what Dr. Deo mentioned. Uganda carries out what we call demographic health surveys periodically every 5 years, but the context for teenage pregnancy that we've been oscillating around the same percentages for the last 20 years. 25%, sometimes 26, sometimes 27, with a lot of regional variation. In some areas you even go to 30, 35 and something like that. So in terms of context, it's a real big issue. I'm a duty bearer from the health background, and our role, we are not the primary, let me say, like the primary responders in this case. Health as a sector is at the tail end of this whole teenage pregnancy issue, because when they get pregnant, they have reproductive health concerns, and rightly so. We are capable as the health sector to provide them reproductive health services. Our role is not really to judge them. How did you get pregnant? You are a minor or what? Of course, it's an issue of concern. We see these are minors, and the legal fraternity might be very interested in who the perpetrators of this are. But for us, from the health angle, we see these as clients. The moment they get to know that there is a consequence or questions outside asking, well, how did you get pregnant and that kind of stuff, then they will never come to the healthcare system. So we see quite a number of them coming to partake our reproductive health services. We've also innovated to ensure that they are grouped as a way of ensuring confidentiality, as a way of ensuring they are comfortable, they're getting dignified services, And as I mentioned, this is at the tail end. So addressing the problem is not a health sector burden alone. So we've over the years been singing that the approach to addressing teen pregnancies is multisectoral, because if you have a deep dive into where this teenager is, by the Constitution, 18 years, you are a child, and getting pregnant below 18 years, then you have, it's either defilement, so legally punishable. So our approach of multisectoral is centered on bringing together all the key players who are responsible for taking care of this teenager or this child. To mention but a few, Ministry of Gender, that has most of the policy guidelines around parenting, around harmful social habits against the child upbringing, and child policies and agenda is part of the multisectoral platform. We also have Ministry of Education, as Professor did mention, that the challenge of having the sexuality framework to be able to provide accurate age-filtered or age-appropriate information to these teenagers about their reproductive health life is something that has eluded this country for some time. But I'm very proud when I hear some voices like Professor and you, Dorothy, coming out at this moment in time. So we need this. The biggest tool we have as a country is definitely going to be empowering this young population with information about their reproductive health rights. Information. In the recent population census, 50.5% of our 46 million people are below 18 years. 50.5. A huge demographic. So if we do not empower them with reproductive health information, then they will make choices without knowing the consequences. And for us in health, what we see are consequences of a system that where probably there was information gap, there was a service gap. In the health sector, we are definitely baffled by the fact that teenagers, despite giving them information about their reproductive health rights, they cannot access freely reproductive health commodities. Now, the outcome is exactly what Professor, and Professor, I want to thank you. You had very right statistics that the leading cause of maternal death in the age group 15 to 24 years, we consider them as adolescent and young women, close almost to 30% is abortion-related complications. And that's not a figure. These are human beings. These are numbers, massive numbers behind there. And these are the ones we are able to document in our healthcare system. But a lot of them go even unnoticed. The complications range from infections, perforations. They are really, really cruel. They can do anything. Professor, when you mentioned about aspirin, I met a girl during my practice who had swallowed 20 tablets of aspirin. So they go out there, deceive themselves that this can work for you, and still gets a problem along the way. But also having a stringent law is a big issue, because what we are seeing now in our data systems is that adolescents are actually going to the health facilities and receiving contraception. They are sexually active, moving out, their body autonomy. I don't know what the law talks about body autonomy and rights. And they come and seek contraception. Yes, the law is there. And for us in our post-abortion care packages, if we are lucky and we get some people who come to the health facility after an abortion, which we don't go into detail to granulate whether it is a thought abortion. The law will say this was a thought abortion, like I found our dear magistrate submitting. We do not go into the details. Was it a thought abortion? Because medically, abortion happens even without soliciting. there is what we call spontaneous abortion. I think the common word is miscarriage. It can happen. So for us, our package, our standard package is for addressing both. At the end of the day, the symptoms and the complications the woman comes with are the same. So whether the healthcare system, whether it's a sought abortion or a spontaneous abortion, what is commonly called a miscarriage, the medical management of this condition is the same, and it's a standard. And we want to thank Sehad and Afia Nahaki. Over the years, because of our engagements, we've had this guideline produced about post-abortion care, though it's not widely disseminated because it also had social issues. The minister, after launched it, I think there are some sectors that were not happy about it. But what is involved in this guideline is really the management of the complications of abortion, whether it's spontaneous or solicited. In the health sector, we have to give you the package. And part of this package is a family planning, because we manage, regardless of your age, if you come with symptoms of abortion, then you are sexually active, and we shall counsel you. By the way, the biggest issue is that with our services, it's really providing information and allowing the client to make the best possible informed decision about their health. So even the post-abortion care package, it's about counseling the client. And in that package, which Uganda actually implements, we have post-abortion family planning. Because if a pregnancy happened, don't want to expect you to have a repeat pregnancy. There are some complications when you've just aborted and then you take you become pregnant again in a short period of time, less than 3 months or less than 6 months, then you are bound to have some complications. So that is how the situation, the context about teenage pregnancies, what approaches the Ministry of Health is employing. So our role is really to provide information, but without a sexuality framework, then that group that is in school, and if you are able to reflect, our children, our girls are spending a lot of time in schools, and that would be a very good platform for imparting knowledge about sexuality education aggressively, so that if the young people are to engage in sexual acts, they are well and fully aware about the consequences. And for us, that is an area of contention. That's an area that we continue to battle with. That's an area that contributes to the 189. If almost 30% of the 189, and if you put it figuratively, 189 sounds a small number per 100,000, but we deliver 2 million babies. Those are the live birth, 2 million. So the 189 times 20 figuratively comes to the number that we lose. That's 3,000 something mothers dying because of pregnancy related complications. So this is an area, if we came together with our friends in the judicial sector, they could have a very big voice. You're very good at advocating. We are duty bearers at the service delivery points. We can look at some lacunas, gray areas in the law. What can we openly do within, like the discussion that Professor talked about with Justice Bart Katurebe? There are always going to be compromises, because there is someone who is I've just told you that the uptake of family planning in adolescents is high, is going up. The most sold commodity in Wandega is emergency contraception, and we think it has effects because they are taking it, they are buying it off counter. Your children are buying emergency contraception off counter, unprescribed but also unregulated. So these are some of the issues that we need to reflect, not for us as this health sector alone, but also to reflect along with the policy makers, the members of parliament, the religious leaders, and all the other stakeholders who are involved in this. But that's the context in which we are working on adolescent and teen pregnancy. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Commissioner. I think I like your objectivity. You know, oftentimes when we are serving, we are torn between giving the audience what they want to hear, the ideal, and the lived realities on ground. But I think you've really done us justice, and we commend you for the efforts. I think it's comforting to know that realistically, there's an all-round approach ministry employs, because sexual reproductive health rights also brings in a lot of mental health related challenges, especially for young people. And if you say you talk about counseling, informed choices, but also making available contraception based on the actual reality, I think that is quite comforting. I know that we may not sing the songs loudly due to the environment we operate in, but you've clearly also amplified that the legal restrictive environment of access to safe abortion services is still challenging, and you've thrown the mantle back to us as legal and policy makers or advocates to see to it that we do something to change this landscape, because it's not going to change anytime soon. If you talk about post-abortion care and the service demand, it says a lot. Off-the-counter postinas says a lot about our activity. We are too either sexually active or it's just the way of life. And we can't control that, but what we can do is give the right information, but also set up services that are age appropriate and easily accessible to save a life. Us who work in this sector, when you talk about unsafe abortions, it's real. When doctor talks about 20 aspirin swallowed, we've encountered teenagers who have put razor blades in their vaginas or sections of hangers just because they don't know who to run to talk about what they're facing. We have those who have taken funny herbal, like grass, I don't know what they call that, because they're desperate to expel the unwanted pregnancy because society won't allow them to talk about these issues. And so we thank the ministry for, providing that budget on post-abortion care. And just because they don't break down the statistics, but it goes to say most abortions, unsafe abortions, are actually procured at home. And when it gets worse, they go there because they know that legally it's permissible. So they go as a last resort to save their lives. If they are losing blood, they're saying, what is our last resort? Most of it is under self-care management. And so when they reach the hospitals, I like the approach of not judging and not questioning so much. In Rwanda, they'll have to tell you to disclose the circumstances, how old, because they have a period as to when the law allows you to actually terminate. But for Uganda, I think overall we are still restrictive, and our only entry point is the post-abortion care package within ministry. And that's why Professor Ben was saying he's not shy to say he has a petitioner in petition 10. That hearing is currently upcoming, I think, on 8th, is it? Or 13th? 11th of September. SEHAD and other parties, HIRAF and Women Pro Bono Initiative, I think, petitioned court on a lack of a clear law on abortion regulation, and also prayed for decriminalization of those clauses on termination of pregnancy. So you can see that we are also not seated, and it's not that we are pushing for abortion as abortion, but like Dr. Mgahi has explained, there are spontaneous abortions where you don't even plan for your pregnancy to come out. There is that is self-sought. But we've also been told that a safe abortion may not be that one that is legal. So there's a difference. Just because it's legal doesn't make it safe. So what I'm saying is we have to have an enabling service system, but also an enabling legal environment. And when we're talking about this, Doctor, you said it well, we're not talking about statistics, we're talking about humans, real humans. And so we need to ponder over this as advocates to pick up interest in this area of practice, like Doctor said. Let's just not go for commercial and all these things. Let's go and actually impact and not be shy, for lack of a better word. Thank you so much, my panelists. I was going to go into the second round, but it's also not fair to have a room full of people who are just taking in and not having any comments or questions. So, dear panelists, allow me to throw back the mic to the participants for now. As we process, both online and physical, do we have any comments or questions at this point in time? Kindly help me pass on the physical mic. There are a number of hands popping up. Please introduce your name, what you do, and you'll get straight to your comment or question. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, panelists. I am Fatuma Omar. the central representative, Uganda Law Society. Yes, now this is a very, very serious discussion, and it touches almost every one of us in this room. I really appreciate the panel. Thank you so much. I think this is the time. However, apart from like the legal, I've seen the legal part of it is really strong. How about the psychosocial? Do we have like, a strong psychosocial system? Because things concerning reproductive health and in respect of abortions, in respect of what my OB said, Ken, your story, in respect of such a parent, it goes beyond, having just a child. It goes beyond psychosocial support. And it's affecting not only the parents, but it's also affecting people that are close to them, people that have never had a child, also pregnant women, it is too wide and it will affect many people. So I'm simply asking, do you also have that psychosocial system that you attach to? Because problem begins with you. So do you have a place that you refer them to? Are these qualified people? Where are we heading? Thank you so much.
Great.
Okay.
Yeah,
thank you, moderator, and thank you, dear panel members. My name is Annette Karunji Mutavingwa, head Back Oslo Development Center. I had not planned to come, but because I knew Professor was here, I told council, please, let's go and attend to Professor. Reaching here, I realized that actually these are issues that we are handling and we are interacting with on a day-to-day basis. Just on Tuesday, I was in my office. A young girl walked into my office, trembling. I asked her, how can I help you? She said, you know what? I delayed to start clerkship. We are now almost 2 months into clerkship. She said, can you kindly post me for clerkship? I said, why? She said, I've not been well. I struggled to do exams, but I've not been well. I said, why? She told me I got a miscarriage. I looked at the girl. The girl is around 23, 24, almost the age of my firstborn child. And maybe in the same class because she's also at LDC. I was like, no, that cannot happen. You are having a miscarriage? I said, that's not true. And unfortunately, if I'm to present your matter before the BACOS Board of Examiners, you need medical evidence. She said, you know what, let me move downstairs and see what I can do. Said, you know what, medical evidence cannot be forged. And if you forge it, that is also a case of professional misconduct. So kindly, you either have the evidence or you don't have it. The girl came back crying, said, Mama, kindly help me. I have a problem. I just feel like terminating my life. I said, why? So now this time I had to exclude my support staff. The secretary said, you know what, come to my office, sit down, relax, how can I help you? The girl told me a very touching story. So as Professor was saying, we really need to categorize these cases and make exceptions. This is a girl, she opened up, she was raped by a cousin brother who has been staying in their home in one of the Kampala high-end, we have these relatives in our homes. The girl was raped. So I said, no, what did you do immediately after? I said, you know what, I couldn't tell my mom. I couldn't tell my dad because I am the firstborn child in our home. I said, relax, I'm ready to help you. I'm going to counsel you. Relax, this is not the end of life. I'm a Christian. How can I help you? The girl told me, a friend of mine advised me to approach a certain lady at, Mary Stops? I went to the lady gave me 2 huge tablets to swallow. She told me I kept the tablets immediately after exams. I went back home and I swallowed the tablets. I almost died from home. The mother is at home, the father is at home. The girl is dying from her bedroom. She's being bathed by her young sister. The parents are not aware of what the daughter is going through. So she told me after swallowing the tablets, she went through that phase, and after like 2 weeks, the thing moved out. It's almost now a month, actually almost 2 months. She has not recovered. The parents are not aware. She kept on delaying starting clerkship, so she just came on Tuesday this week. And I said, now, have you been able to go back and get appropriate medical attention? Because I'm concerned about your health. She told me, up to now, I'm still, patting myself because I'm not okay. I'm not fine. I'm still bleeding. I said, you are not fine because you need medical attention. I actually didn't know, maybe I would have referred her, but I didn't know where to refer her. So these things are real. These things are happening. The girl was raped, and immediately when she confronted the cousin brother ran away. He escaped from home. The parents don't know, and she said she does not want the parents to know because they will kill her. So these things are really happening, and I think it's time that actually we take a decision and we address these issues. So I thank you, Professor. I thank you, the entire team. I really am happy, Senior Counsel, that I chose to come to this stream. These are real issues that we are grappling with in our homes, in the different sectors. It's time really to ensure that we candidly have a discussion and ensure that they are addressed. I thank you. Commissioner would really be happy to advise this girl, maybe to get, post-abortion, attention services. Otherwise, right now, I'm really concerned that, her health is still in danger. I thank you.
Wow. Thank you so much, Mrs. Annette Tabingwa. I think you're just opening our eyes to advocacy opportunities too within institutions of learning, higher institutions of learning, in terms of school health clubs, for example, or setting aside corners where we can have girls actually open up. And within these facilities, I'm just thinking out loud, how equipped are our dispensaries? Because they're the first point of contact for first aid, for example, or issues to do with health. Do we just look at Panadols, the basics, malaria, or do we also expound to reproductive health commodities or services? Because imagine this story, and you're just among the rare few who paid extra attention to make sure that this girl opens up to you, So I think this is a learning for all of us. It can happen within a learning institution, it can happen within a home, within a church setting, within a workplace. How well equipped are we to render the necessary information? Because imagine you were stuck. You felt sorry, pushed her, but the referral pathway was where the blockage was. And I can assure you that story will never make it to the family forum. And this girl will bear this burden alone. In terms of psychosocial effects, that's a lifetime sentence for her. But thank you so much for sharing this experience and for being bold about it. Most times we shy away from it, but the more we have voices like this, the more I believe our policymakers and stakeholders are hearing, and we can only hope that legally we advance progressively to tackle this elephant in the room. Thank you so much. Any other comments? Yes, Claire.
Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. How are you? Thank you so much for everyone. It's been a very enriching discussion. Thank you so much, Professor, and the entire team on the panel. I go by the name Dr. Blair Chiza, and I'm an executive director of an organization called Usawa Health Initiative Uganda. And I'm a pro-choice and a strong advocate for safe abortion care. So things to point out, from all the stories and experiences that have been shared, actually very true. We've seen lots of young girls working in clinics, sending texts to ask the health workers, asking for a way out. They conceived unintentionally and they want a way out. The sad part is doctors trained in Uganda, we never have a session on how to provide safe abortion care. And also given that in the country we don't have a clear stand from the Ministry of Health on what exactly should be done in cases where clients come in when they want safe abortion care. We had guidelines in 2006. Again, we had guidelines in 2018. Both of them were retracted and they are not in use. So it means that we as health workers are left on our own to make a decision that will either be legal or illegal in that sense. 2018 guidelines were very clear.
Specialized equipment. As I talk now, we have a department
There's a health risk to the mother, and things were clearly highlighted that in those particular instances it was acceptable to provide safe abortion care. But with those guidelines not being available in practice poses a challenge for health workers, and also the lack of training for health workers. Trust me, very many young girls work in these clinics expecting us to know exactly whether you're going to provide the service or not. They expect you to have a clue on what exactly to do. And the sad reality is many health workers don't know what exactly to do. You've just seen the instances where a girl was given 2 tablets. I don't know what exactly they were trying to achieve, but in proper safe abortion care, there's nowhere where you give 2 tablets. Either you're going to use mifepristone, you pass around 24, 36 hours, then you give misoprostol, which is again 4 tablets. And most of these unsafe abortions are actually happening in health facilities because there's no clear guidelines, there's lack of training. Someone is given an underdose, they bleed out for like a month, someone ends up with an infection that is going to cost them their uterus or even their life or worse. So such things are actually happening in the eyes of, we don't want to have this conversation. It's a very big elephant in the room, but we just don't want to look at it. And at the end, we go strong on providing post-abortion care, which I feel like we're just playing with the lives of these young women. So we need something very clear. We need guidelines. We need trainings as health workers to see that we not only help these young girls, but as well we plan better for the future. Training these young medical students as early when they're having this as part of their curriculum is something that would be very, very important. I beg to leave it at that. Thank you so much, Dorothy.
Thank you so much, Blair. I know we are fast pressed for time. We started a bit late. And when we talk about humanities and such topics, we don't want to stop. But I'll give a few hands as we summarize so that I throw back the mics to the panelists. How many hands we have? Okay, because I'm warned that other breakaway sessions are concluding or they're almost done. But I think it's only fair that we share what our thoughts are like. And therefore, let's proceed, as long as we keep them under a minute, yeah? And it's a Friday. Yes, Jennifer.
Okay, thank you so much, the panelists, and for that insightful discussion and conversation. My name is Jennifer Naomi Arionget. I'm a banker. I've been a banker for about 15 years. That's where I do my practice. So I just want us to tweak this a bit. You know, we've had so much conversation around maternal and reproductive health. We've heard from the judiciary on the cases that go through there. We've heard from the ministry, and what kept in my mind is how are we managing these people who are supposed to ensure that they deliver on these services? I'm also an ardent corporate governance practitioner, and I think the ministry really needs to be deliberate in infusing corporate governance in your hospitals and the various facilities that you have. You know, we've had stories of doctors who don't appear in the health facilities, only go there once a week, you know. Who has oversight of these facilities? You know, there are administrative elements to managing an entity, you know. You don't just leave it to whoever, you know, cares to manage it. If mothers go, I can talk about my health center facility in my village in Bukedia. You know, I was on maternity leave and I went there and I had to take my baby for vaccination. And I sat there for 2 hours. And the nurse just kept moving up and down, up and about, you know. And I kept asking, so who's in charge? I think you need to have those hard conversations with your district health officers, you know, on managing these entities. Some of these things are actually avoidable. Consequence management. If a child is stolen in Mulago, who's responsible? Do you have to go to court, you know? Do they have to be dragged to court? Someone needs to be held accountable. So if you don't embed strict governance practices in your entities, you will keep going on around with these issues. We will sit here, we will discuss about maternal health and all that, but we will not resolve the problem, you know. Look at the private entities. Why is it that they don't have stolen babies in there? What are they doing different, you know? You need to take accountability as a ministry. You need to have proper oversight. You need to embed these principles in your entities to ensure that you actually have oversight. If you've decentralized management of health to the districts, who is accountable? To whom is the district health officer accountable? How do you manage these facilities? How do you have oversight? If you don't resolve that issue, you've left these facilities to whoever cares. And unfortunately, the maternal and reproductive health section is the one that suffers most, because that is mainly the majorly consumed services from some of these hospitals. And these people cannot afford, maybe like me, to go to a good health facility where I can pay. So I think we need to be deliberate. We can talk about having the good laws and the framework and everything. But for me, I think you need to approach it from a governance point of view. Ensure that these facilities, there are strict governance principles that are in place. Your district health officers or the administrators of these health facilities actually know what they are doing, and they're held accountable for all these things that happen. Otherwise, at the end of the day, all these suits against the Attorney General, against all these, will keep coming up, but you're not resolving the root cause of all these things. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. You bring in an aspect of monitoring and accountability. The other hand.
My name is Rogers Magala from the Daily Monitor. Professor Beden, you talked about something very important and painful, that if parents do not talk to their children, the world will teach them about sex. And we have very many resources out there and people that are ready to teach the children. But then my question is, the parents have a role to teach their children. But as they say that you cannot give what you don't have, can we enroll parents into robust campaigns to equip them with the right reproductive health information? Because even then, if they try to teach them, they don't have the right information to tell them. Many parents are shy. One day, when I got a job in Fort Portal, my father had never talked to me about sex. But when I was leaving, he sent me a message that HIV/AIDS kills. So, because we saw in the Daily Monitor that Fort Portal was ranking high in the prevalence, so he had never talked to me about anything, but he sent me a text, just a sentence to tell me HIV/AIDS kills. You know, and very many out there, they don't talk to their children. Then how? We need to equip parents. So we need to have these programs on board to tell them the right information. Parents teach with the iron hand. They are bitter, they are angry, a child gets pregnant and they are angry at them. We need to parent with love, you know. My second issue is we live in a moralistic society, which is also patriarchal. A few years ago, the church, the Catholic Church, the Church of Uganda, rejected the proposal to have sex education in schools. Now, very many people are influenced by the church. We are on different pages. They seem not to see the danger of limited information on reproductive health. How can we bring these people on board so that we can speak the same language? Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much for that. The sexuality education happened in a text. Parents, this is something for us to reflect on. Over to you, Rachel.
Thank you, panelists. I'm Rachel Nsenge. I work with NSSF. In the earlier session about ADR, a panelist asked a question, is there justice in ADR? And he related it to...
ADR is alternative dispute resolution, just in case.
And he related it to a divorce case where the wife asked a question, I just want to know why you're walking away. And I relate to the same when it comes to reproductive health. And I go to what my colleague said, Council Sebabi, they settled a matter and the victim was paid 50 million. And where I see it as a mother, I don't think any amount of money can replace a child. And my question, and the same question keeps lingering. We are embracing ADR in all areas of practice. But how are we going to ensure that there is justice in reproductive health? Thank you.
Thank you so much for being brief to the point. And I think when that case made news, everybody reached out to us and said, do you really think that is fair? You know, there was a question of what is fair, what is justiciable, you know? And the mother kept saying, it can never bring back my child, but I'm happy there's been justice. Why? She felt hard before court. It was beyond the money, eventually. Because first she was like, I didn't trust the court system, you know? She was like, I didn't really trust the court system. But it took these years, and they finally listened. I almost gave up because everybody in the market kept saying, you are a poor woman from a market. No, there's no way you're going to get any slight bit of justice. So the issue of compensation is subject to discussion. Remember, these are issues that touch the heart and leave deep wounds that can never go. But I think if we are testing court and court listens and it gives us something, it's also a deterrent out there that actually I can take you to court and there can be repercussions. But it won't undo, it won't repair the pain or damage, but it will send a message out there. Most times when we're taking on litigation cases, it's half faith. You may win, you may lose, but as advocates of sexual reproductive health rights, it's sometimes the platform to get these issues discussed out there that is a win for us, not the actual win within courts. So thank you so much for those reflective questions. And I know we're supposed to be summarizing, so I'm going to throw it back to the panelists to answer back to the questions or comments that have arisen. But at the same time, you'll give parting shots in your respective capacities where you sit and serve right now. Where do we go from here? As an academician, as an advocate of sexual and reproductive health rights, where do we go from here based on what we've discussed? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dorothy, the panelists and participants. On my part, I will, insofar as God gives me the breath and the energy to teach, I will continue teaching these issues. I know the tension that exists because I'm a strong Christian and in fact a freelance preacher, very strong Christian, but an advocate for reproductive justice. Students I have taught, a good number have confidence in me and they reveal to me what Annette has said. I encounter this like every 2 months. I get a story, including, by the way, things like suicide, almost going to suicide. It's a serious matter. But as we talk about this thing, let's not forget that as we talk to our girls and boys, the entry point should not be contraceptives. The entry point should be to draw from our pre-colonial arrangement where we should promote virginity or purity until adulthood or marriage. That's the starting point. We are not saying we enter, that's not my approach. We must talk to these children to avoid that. But we must start from the point that sex is beautiful, but it is beautiful at an appropriate time. In Rwanda, the debate has been going on, and I think I was with the delegate from Rwanda. They are approving a policy that girls at the age of 15 are mature enough to access contraceptives. Rwanda. Yeah, Rwanda, that's what they are doing. So that's the message I'm just giving in. And to the person from the monitor, I agree with you, we need to accelerate the flow of information, both sexual and reproductive health information. And we have a starting point, by the way. The Minister of Health passed the comprehensive sexuality education. Controversial as it is, we can build from there. Then the other gentleman, the doctor, talked about the guidelines of 2015, in fact not 2018, 2015, which are beautiful guidelines. The minister had signed them, but under pressure, she withdrew them. I was part of the team that burnt midnight candles, both in Jinja and Kampala. You know, reason why we were changing places with the Minister of Health, debating these up to one time we even sat up to 3:30 a.m. We were so tired, we produced a very beautiful document. The entry point there again was, we were talking about family planning. We talked about family planning, contraception. We talked about these issues of exceptions to this criminalization of abortion, those incest, deformities, etc. And we also talked about, even if you go into that, there must be that procedure counseling. But you see, building on what we call section 224, I think they have now realigned them, that section which follows the case of Rex versus Bone, that a doctor can, in good faith, judging the woman or girl before her, carry out a procedure, okay, in order to save a woman's life or the life of the unborn child. So, building on that, we said we can argue for the protection of a woman's right to life between an unborn child, a fetus, and saving the woman's life or health. What comes first? And so we did that. Then issues like orphanage, not orphanage. What are these who handle children who are abandoned? What? They are called what? Baby home, orphanage, orphanage and foster care. Because there are women, there are girls who will say, women who will say, I have been raped, okay, but my religion does not allow me to carry out an abortion. I would rather a child be handled by another person, but I don't want to see this child because the post-trauma depression will be so high on me, so I need to have this child elsewhere. Those are the issues that were debated, post-abortion counseling, all those. But I can assure you, whether you are a serious Christian practicing like me or what, it's a question of time that Uganda will embrace what other countries are going through. Whether this judgment comes out positive or not, the issue will be addressed. The Pope and the Catholic Church do not want contraceptives, but Catholic women use contraceptives. Finally, a thing I would request you to look at, again, which raises ethical and religious issues, antiretroviral and assisted reproductive technology. It raises ethical and religious issues, but any woman who has not had children for 10 years, who is called that name, barren, infertile, knows the stigma and discrimination she goes through. The mother saying, you are feeding my son's toilet, eating food, feeding my son's toilet. The sisters-in-law, everything. These women, I have talked to a number. In spite of my strong Christian values, I am an advocate and I don't have any regrets of assisted reproductive technology, including, by the way, sperm donation, surrogacy, okay? And I'm attacking, and I've done so, that provision in the assisted reproductive bill that says these services are only available to married women. We have many women who are in cohabitive relationships. We have women who are above 18, girls who do not want to get married but who want to have children. As I conclude, friends, barrenness, infertility, irrespective of whether the challenge is with the man, society, because it's patriarchal, gender unequal relations, it will think it is the woman doing that. We need to subsidize this type of care. We need to campaign for national insurance to cover this cost of assisted reproductive technology so that our women and girls do not suffer in silence, facing that stigma, alone and frightened in those homes, those communities where they are looked at as useless and yet they are human beings. Thank you very much.
A round of applause to Professor. You can see the tone about the passion in making sure that girls and women are safe and are not discriminated against. And I thank you so much for bringing about the assisted reproductive technologies discussions. There's a bill in the offing, so it would be nice to follow these discussions. It's an invisible sexual reproductive health rights issue that is not often talked about, like infertility and menopause. So I thank you so much, Professor. It had skipped us, but you came through naturally. Thank you so much. Yes, Dr. Deo.
Yes, thank you very much, the audience. I'll quickly respond to the question raised by Fatuma on the need for psychosocial support in the reproductive health services. And yes, it's true. most of these conditions or scenarios which clients go through have a very strong component of psychosocial issues and challenges, a lot of depression, anxiety, and as we are providing these services, we have ensured that at least we have a component of mental health incorporated in our. We have come up with what we call the integration strategy, the SRH and HIV, TB, and mental health strategy, where we are looking at integrating components of mental health into in the provision of sexual and reproductive health services, and seeing how health workers providing reproductive health services are also able to link clients to either receive these clients or even receive these clients at the point, receive these services at the point of care where they're getting in touch with a service provider. For abortion services, in the post-abortion care package, counseling and addressing the mental health issues is one of the pillars of post-abortion care. The other being, which was mentioned by the Commissioner, being the family planning, post-abortion family planning. So you realize that actually this has been addressed, like what Fatuma was raising. And the need is for us to see how this can be scaled up to ensure that each health worker or the facilities are able to provide this service in a comprehensive way. Not only caring for the medical aspects of it, but even the mental and psychological components. Otherwise, we all have a role to play, right from the service providers and the clients, but everyone, to ensure that people know that these services, post-abortion care is available, reproductive health services are available for those who need them, and to have them in the right places. Thank you.
Thank you. These discussions keep tickling my mind. We had a Venereal Diseases Act that we're challenging in courts of law. And before we knew it, the Public Health Act repealed the Venereal Diseases Act. So we don't know if we have a plan for management of gonorrhea, syphilis, and all these other diseases like we are doing for HIV and TB, but it's food for thought as we deliver it. Over to you, Dr. Mugabe.
Thank you so much. And just building on what Dale was mentioned, the guidelines for venereal diseases are available. They are available. The drugs are available in our low-level health facilities. Maybe I didn't pick what the real issue is, but I think there on that side we are quite fine. We hear you. I didn't pick the name. Bukedia, the issues of supervision, accountability. I think there's just no need to defend anything, but some of these issues are really negligence on the side of our service providers. There are a bit of challenges in our supervision framework because of the decentralization law. The decentralization law really affects so much mandates and holding people accountable. For example, the minister cannot go and sack someone in Bukedia. No. So the decentralization law, they report to their local system, and really, so directly the Ministry of Health has an overarching mandate, but holding someone accountable, real that level of accountability, attendance to duty, we do the supervisions. But if the local system is weak, then you really have a big challenge, and that mandate is under Ministry of Local Government. You can imagine. So directly we are in charge of the bigger hospitals, the regional referrals, and the national referrals as Ministry of Health. But we do an overarching mandate to supervise the lower level facilities. But I must say there are always ways that we want to ensure that people are getting more accountable. Especially with our current accountability for every maternal and newborn death. Of course, it's post-mortem in the sense that we are reviewing after a death has occurred, but it helps us to learn and also hold people accountable that this was a gap, this was preventable, this is not according to our standards of practice. This is a deviation from the normal. You need to have done better professionally. But if something is gross negligence, then we have lines of arbitration through the councils, which are formally or constitutionally mandated by Parliament to handle disciplinary cases. I must say that in last week, probably you saw in the news that the Medical Council, the Uganda Medical and Dental Practitioners Council, had suspended 10 doctors, practitioners from practicing. We want to make sure that these structures are strengthened. Outside suspension, we can actually be deregistered, completely deregistered. So if this arm can really extend even to the local governments. So we are working very closely to support them to really begin biting. On the issue of information asymmetry, the children, excuse me, children seem to have more. There's a lot of AC here. So our children seem to have, they are more informed about sexuality issues, and the parents are left in a state of being like they are receiving information from the students, from their children. So this is a big issue. When we are doing the parenting guidelines that I mentioned under gender, we discuss this quite a lot. The parents have given up. So for me, in a nutshell, we have a lot of work to do, both as duty bearers, but also you as advocates, as parents. It's going to take a collaborative effort, not any single individual. And we have achieved so much in terms of collaborating. We used to avoid, the first time I took the minister to Sehad's offices, said, Sehad, you've been taking me to court all the time. You've been taking me to court, but this time I'm coming because you've helped me gain some power. So I really like the approach. We know for a fact that there are gaps in our healthcare system. Some of them are even beyond us. We know, like the human resource, the numbers are inadequate. These health workers also fall sick. So these are the issues. If we can collaboratively work on them and say, the standard is saying that we have this amount, can we push together, get Parliament involved, allocate some more resources? It becomes now, you become partners in advocating, and so that we can also be held accountable that we have all the necessary ingredients, and now we need a better product. I want to stop there, but I really want to appreciate the opportunity to present at this very important forum and also to discuss these pertinent issues. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mgahe, for saying it's actually a collective effort. So even corporate social responsibility is a value addition to the health sector. Resources and finances are always a challenge, and we hope that we can, push for drives that can change the status quo in every possible way. Thank you. Over to you, Councillor Ken.
Thank you, participants, both online and physical. I want to respond to the question by Ms. Rachel Nsenge about whether the 50 million shillings was justice to the mother. But you see, the question is, what is the alternative? Do we sit back and fold our arms? Certainly not. The case of petition 16, what is probably referred to as the game changer, 2 women died. One woman was in I think Narua. Then the other woman in Michiana, who had delivered one baby at the health center 3. And then the midwife realized that there's another baby coming, and then she was unable. She referred the mother to the district hospital. And then when she reached there, of course she didn't have the mama kit. And then the midwives asked for the mama kit, and then she was unable to procure one for herself. And in the process, she died. So 2 women died, and the baby died. But at the end of the day, lives were lost. And the court, on top of the pronouncements, the strong pronouncements that were made, it ordered for monetary compensation to the victims or the family of those victims. So we can't sit back. We have to litigate for systematic changes we litigate with the hope that you hold the duty bearers accountable. That if this has happened, they have paid and they have carried the cross. So you litigate to save the next mother who's going to walk into that hospital to deliver. Yeah. So much as it may not say, it may not be sufficient because life cannot be returned, but the satisfaction or the motivation is that you're litigating to save the next mother who will walk to that hospital to deliver. And then two, the duty bearer there, the hospitals are held accountable for their omissions or for their negligence. So that's what helps us. Then in respect to my parting shots, I have listened to Dr. Mhagi very well about the presentation. He gave us statistics about the impact of the restrictive law on abortion. The statistics of girls who die every day because of the unsafe abortions. And I'm listening to him here very beautifully. And I'm wondering, we have that petition 10 of 2017 where Sehad and others challenge the mission of the state to enact a law that regulates the termination of pregnancy under Article 2 of the Constitution. And I'm thinking, we have Attorney General who is supposed to represent government, and this is Minister of Health. So the Attorney General is totally against what he's saying, something different, and his client, that is Minister of Health, is saying totally something different. So you find a mismatch, and now at the end of the day, the common man, the common person who's supposed to benefit from that, loses out. Yeah. How I wish the two would work together. How I wish Attorney General would heed to advice from Ministry of Health, so that at the end of the day, we even help the judges to arrive at a fair and a balanced decision, knowing where they're coming from, knowing the implication of the lack of that law to the mothers and young girls in Uganda. Thank you.
Oh, wow, thank you so much, Kane. We are keeping our fingers crossed ahead of that decision, but I think you really raised a very valid point in terms of AG and the client sitting to sit with that. They help court. We're supposed to be friends of court, arrive at a very fair judgment. I will finally push the mic to the one and only female panelist
Okay.
or speaker in this session today, Her Worship Rosalind Nsenga.
Okay, I'll just take off a minute. I can see everybody is actually tired, but it's been very, very interesting. So I want to thank fellow panelists and our moderator and the audience for staying up to this time. Thank you so much. But I would want to close with one thing. Just like you know my background, I've come from court. So I have carefully listened to all the submissions of the panelists and the audience. And I think one thing is for sure, it's been actually clearly said that the court has a significant role to play. It was so pleasant to hear that from the doctors. The doctors have said, Dr. Deo, we are doing this, we are doing that. But when you follow from the academician, the professor himself, he has gone to court requesting, can court make these declarations? And the doctor this afternoon has just affirmed and confirmed the significance of the role of the court in advancing maternal and health rights in Uganda. So for us, as far as court is concerned, Professor has affirmed that the jurisprudence is in place. So what do we take home as advocates? Go and start the work. We have the jurisprudence, we have everything in place, the courts are waiting. Thank you so much.
23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50.
Happy birthday, Professor. We see why you're young. We see why you're youthful. Yes, thank you so much. Actually, we should have done 65. To the online participants, I am breathing heavily. I hope you didn't cheat yourselves. I hope you also stood up off the camera and you stretched. Thank you so much, the participants, for being patient. You can see how unfit I am. This breathing has taken me off. Let's pause for a group photo. I thank you so much for attending. And we hope that Jessica Oga has been capturing the way forward for us. And we shall share this on our social platforms and generate a report now. I can't believe my heart. Hey, it means I actually took on the 50, Professor. I did the 50. So let's pause for a group photo. And please don't miss out on the cocktail. Uganda Law Society has organized an after refreshment for us. You are invited. That's the message I've got. Thank you so much. Let's have a group photo with the panelists and then the participants. I need to hit the gym.
No. I needed that. I haven't been exercising.